Welcome to the Mile High Real Estate Hustle Podcast. Today we are joined by Brett Baird. How are you doing today, Brett?
I'm excellent. How are you?
I'm doing well. Give us a little introduction to the people that don't know who you are.
Yeah, so born and raised in Denver. I grew up actually right up the street here on Monaco in Virginia, so, native here. Went to actually some of the same schools as you did, right?
Yeah, that's correct. When we talked a couple of days ago, I think you went to
Fallis and McMean.
And
Place Middle School.
Place Middle School.
Yep, George Washington for a year, then Cherry Creek. I finished out, and then my junior year of high school as an exchange student, lived in Spain, and then moved back to Spain for another 3 years afterwards. Yeah.
No, that is awesome.
Yeah.
Do you know Spanish?
I do. This is probably the most English I'll speak all week, as a matter of fact. Yeah, so I speak Spanish. I got back to Denver, got into the mortgage industry. It'll be 21 years in June. So, we've been in this since we were young, and it's been a heck of a ride. But yeah, I built my business on around Spanish speaking population.
Brett, let me ask you this. So when you were in Spain, is that where you learned how to speak Spanish, or did you learn some in school?
I had 1 year, I'll never forget, at George Washington High School. I had Mr. Gregory was my coach, and I ran into him at like a bar a few years ago, super good guy. So I had 1 year in high school, and then I was an exchange student my junior year, and I lived in Bilbao, so like northern Spain in the Basque Country, and I got super lucky there because I was awful at it. And the family, my host family, the mother is English, the father's Basque, so they both speak Spanish. She's like grammatically the best I've ever seen. Her super English thick accent, and they have 8 children. So wow. I think the one that was the worst maybe spoke 4 languages.
Wow.
So it really helped me being around a bunch of people that were multilingual, and they really pushed me to learn. And then when I went back the second time, that's when I got really good at it because I was down southern Spain. I didn't have any English speaking friends, and it was kind of sink or swim at that point.
And you were there, 4 years?
I was there for 4 years total. So yeah, junior year of high school, moved back for 3 years. And then I had a buddy who kept coming to visit me from one of my good friends from Denver. And I'm like, what are you selling? How do you paying for this? You're coming every 4 months, and like shopping and doing all, and he's like, well, I'm a mortgage guy, and at that point I'm like, well, what's a mortgage? And, I was in a relationship there that ended, and it was kind of time to come home. I just wasn't going to, play guitar in southern Spain for the rest of my life.
Do you still miss her?
Just learned flamenco music for the rest of my life. And came home and got into the mortgage business like the week after.
Really?
Yeah, it was wild. It was like, have you ever seen the movie Boiler Room?
Yeah.
That's what it was.
What year was that when you got in the mortgage business?
It was 2003.
2003. So you got to experience some of and you said you started working with the Latino community immediately?
Not immediately. Like right out of the gate, I was just calling agents, meeting agents, and it was, the typical realtors, like a 45-year-old white dude. And, I was great on the phones, so it was easy to get the meeting. But when they'd see me, they're like, "Oh, well, you're young, you're a child. Like you don't look like my clients, you don't talk like my clients." And so I started to get super frustrated. I almost got out of the business, and fortunately, I had some pretty good mentors, and they're like, "Well, you speak Spanish. Why don't you look at that?" And I always tell this story. I was at Camarón Loco on Federal and the 8th.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there was a magazine there, and I was sitting there and just drowning my sorrows in a Levante Muertos, just all alone in the corner in the back. And there was a Casas magazine, and so I started thumbing through it. And I'm like, all right, there's a bunch of young Spanish-speaking realtors. Like maybe I should be their lender. I speak Spanish, and so I started cold calling these guys. And this was in the day when you could people were doing really unscrupulous things.
Oh yeah.
And it was normally, a Spanish speaker ripping off another Spanish speaker, charging 8 points. Like I saw some of these HUDs I used to see back in the day were just, it was sad. And there's a couple companies in particular that were just really predatory. And I remember the first call that I had with someone, they said, "Wait, are you white?" Because I called them in Spanish. And I was like, "Where are you from?" And because I had a super thick accent at that point, super thick Southern Spanish accent. They're like, where are you from? Argentina, Spain? Like, you speak weird. I'm like, I'm from Denver. They're like, wow, okay, so you're not going to overcharge my clients and head back to wherever you're from and just do awful things. Immediately, there was trust. So they're like, all right, you're from here. You learned the language. You kind of know what you're doing in lending. I didn't know great yet at that point. But at least people would take the meetings with me. So that was super encouraging. And then, one of your old counterparts back in the day, I went to Sushi Den one time with a gal named Monica and a bunch of her friends back in the day, Monica Toscana.
Yeah.
And a bunch of her friends were there, and Tony Martinez was there. And I'm sitting there, I'm 21, probably had too much to drink. And, I'm really leaning into Tony about, I'm the best lender in Denver, right? And he's like, well, I don't think so, but I got a deal. Let's have you look at this deal. So the next day we met at like Maggiano's, and he brings me, brought a file, and it was a tough deal. It was a deal that wouldn't go FHA, and it was right when Wells Fargo came out with this emerging markets program. Remember that?
Yep.
It was to compete with FHA. And so over the next 2 days, I read 600 pages of guidelines, figured out the deal, closed the deal, and it was a fix and flip for him. And then so that was the first bigger agent that I was able to kind of get with, and we still do business to this day.
What's crazy is I think it was back in 1999 or 2000. The second brokerage I worked at was called Searle Homes, and they gave me a little desk and an office, and I had to share it with somebody. And then I think one day Tony Martinez walks in, and I think he was just recently licensed, or he had been licensed only 6 months, less than a year.
Yeah.
And I think I was only licensed a year or less too. And so basically he sat in the same office that I did. And, it was nice because we had a nice relationship. And, and eventually I think I was there for maybe 6 months to a year. And I think he might have been there 6 months to a year as well. And then he ended up going to Remax Elite.
Yep.
And then I went over to Remax Southeast on Hamden, Yosemite. But it's just crazy how, we both shared the same little office back in, it was 1999 or 2000 back then. So it's just kind of interesting to see.
It's amazing to see how people grow, right? And then everyone does it a little bit differently, but there's always a little overlap.
Yeah.
And I've known you for 15 years is probably when we ran into you?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably 15 years ago is when we first met. And just seeing, some of the OG guys stay in the business that have decided now, all right, it's not just about me anymore. It's about training up the next generation, which you've done a really good job at, especially because you've had some pretty explosive growth over the last year.
Yeah, about the last year, 2 years, I would say.
So in a down market, it's admirable, right?
Yeah.
And the really cool thing about you is we were just talking about this, you literally just kind of outwork everyone.
I like to work. I love what I do, and this is sometimes it's fun, it's challenging. I'm very competitive, and I love this business. So I want to stay here, and I give a lot of props to some of the agents, the old school OG agents that have been here for so long. I've seen a lot of new agents who come in and crush it, maybe 1, 2, 3 years, and then you don't see them. You don't see them, and as well with mortgage lenders too, because back in the day there was just so many things that shouldn't be going on that was going on. Where people were actually taking advantage of the Latino community. The own Latinos were taking advantage of the Latino community, and they would make killings, and then they wouldn't be in the business 2, 3 years later. I remember I had this one guy, he came to training in my office. I'm not going to mention any names or anything, but he said, why do you only sell 4 or 5 houses a month? I'm like, hey man, I do 4 or 5 houses a month by myself, and I have a pretty nice life, and I sleep well at night. He goes, oh, well, we do 30 loans a month, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. I was like, yeah, man, but you're charging 3-4 points, on every HUD settlement statement. And I'll tell you this right now, you ain't going to be in the business too long. He's like, you know what he called me? He said, you're a hater. I was like, no, I'm not a hater. I'm just being real.
I'm a businessman.
Yeah, I was like, eventually these clients are going to know what you're doing, and then they're going to come back and they're going to start, telling people that you guys are doing the wrong thing, and you're not going to be in the business. And sure enough, 2-3 years later, they weren't in the business, and so I think, I respect a lot of the agents or mortgage lenders who have been able to stay in this business, longevity, that's huge, that you can stay in the business and adapt to some of the changes, because things have changed so much in the last couple of years.
Super. And now I think it's going to even speed up with this whole NAR thing.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's here, it's real, it's knocking on our door. And, we were talking about this earlier. There's going to be a lot of new models that get spun out of this deal. It's going to be really interesting to watch. But back to your point, it's cool to see the guys that have been doing it for a long time the right way.
Yes.
Show and demonstrate physically. All right, cool. This has been a 23, 24-year run for you.
25 years in.
25, wow.
Yeah.
And then I'm almost at 21. And that's why I got into the bilingual side of the business. I'm like, these guys are getting a raw deal. They're not being taken care of. I'm going to treat them like I would treat any other client and give them great service and a good, fair deal. And I think it's going to work out. And lo and behold,
Yep.
just by doing the right thing and showing up super consistently and, eventually growing a team like you've done here, it's been beneficial. And, we all learn a lot. And these days more so, with all the podcasts and tech, there's just so much information out there that it's cool to see people that are still, kind of belly to belly like yourself, like that door. I mean, when I get I'm a pretty early riser, and I get to the gym sometimes at like 5:30, and he's leaving. I'm like, I gotta sharpen it up in the 3 a.m. department here,
No, yeah. And then the other thing too that was crazy back then is you saw so much things going on with like mortgage fraud with people like we could do a whole podcast on stories just on what we saw, experienced then, but
bananas.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the things that I was seeing, it was just insane.
I mean, I saw a HUD, I'll never forget it, and it was this super nice older dude from like Chihuahua, like muy chido así, no? With like hat and just like a humble, nice guy. And
Primo.
It was a $150,000 house. And on the HUD, he was being charged $15,000 in points, 10 points, to refinance this house.
That is insane.
And, like, I'll never forget looking at that document and being like, this is horrible. You're stealing from him at that point. You know what I mean? There was a lot of that going on.
Yeah, there was a lot. They would tell people like, "Oh, you're saving $100 on your monthly payment, but your debt just went up $15,000-$20,000."
Absolutely.
And then I also saw where people were buying with their kids. Because you have Juan Hernandez and you have Juan Hernandez Jr. Then they were buying, houses with their kids' social security number, whiteout credit reports, the fake tax returns, the fake W-2s. I mean, you saw a lot. And, when I was at that stage of my career, I always said that, I want to be in this business in the long run. I want to be here in the long run. I want to be able to sleep at night. I want to do what's right, and eventually, I want to retire, one day working in the real estate business. I don't want to be chased by HUD or the FBI or anything like that. Or because I heard about some lenders just taking off and disappearing and, a lot of things.
There was a real big one back then.
Yeah.
And I remember that whole family just left.
Yeah.
Like from one night to the other. But, they were closing 300 deals a year and charging people 10 points. Like it was enough for them to leave and never come back.
That's true.
But, fortunately now there's a higher barrier to entry.
Yes.
Right? At least there's licensing on our end. Back then, you didn't have to get a license.
No.
What? Are you serious?
On mortgage people?
When did this take place?
2008, 2009.
Yeah,
Oh
2008,
my God.
2009 when it crashed.
Yeah. It was like right after the crash when Dodd-Frank and all that stuff rolled out. Like, there weren't licenses. You could just do a loan.
Yeah.
Charge whatever
That
you
is
want.
insane.
You would see, if somebody was charging 2 points, they were being nice.
Yeah, that was like a really good deal for us.
Yeah, seriously.
Well, that and then the way that the banks promoted it. You've seen The Big Short and all those movies. We would have people coming into our office saying, sell this 2-year fixed loan with a 3-year prepayment penalty that varies afterwards, and so on and so forth. I fortunately got really into FHA heavy business and fixed stuff. We did some ARMs, but only if it were more beneficial than not. And I'm going to flip it and I'm going to be here a year or whatever, and there's enough money to pay off the prepayment penalty, which really today doesn't even exist. Yeah. It's a lot of these words for some of the newer guys in the industry that are going to watch this. They're going to be like, "What is that?
What's an arm?"
What's a prepayment penalty? But it all comes out in the wash. And karma's real.
Yeah.
And taking care of people's real.
Exactly.
And it eventually, comes back and if you want to, you grow a team like you've done and become successful.
I have this story. My brother and I, once we owned a small little mortgage company,
Yeah.
and we were doing well. We were doing like 4 or 5 loans, a month. It wasn't anything crazy, just something that we could handle. And at that time, it was a broker, and we were signed up with different companies, right? And I remember the account executive. We had this deal under contract, and the account executive was like, I think we were supposed to close a Friday, and she comes in and she's like, "You guys don't want to push the closing up to a Thursday?" And so we tried, and she kept pushing that, and eventually the seller didn't. We were representing the buyer, and the seller didn't want to do that. So we get to the closing table. My buyer signed, the seller signs, the title rep goes back, inside her office to send out the docs to get funding, permission, and she comes back and she's like, "This bank doesn't have any money. They just went bankrupt.
There's no wire.
There's no wire coming in." I was like, "What do you mean?" So my client looks at me and says, "Hey, take care of this."
I love how everyone thinks they're like, you just go
Caesar, take care of this. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. I mean, it was just one of those moments where you just turn red. I mean, I just wanted to run to the bathroom and just like stick my head in the toilet and like, whoa, it was as bad. You know, it was awful because then you just started seeing banks crash left and right.
It felt like the end of the world. It's a lot different than this one now. The one that we're in now has just been a really slow bleed. At least in '08, we knew like that day, we're like, oh, we're all in a real bad spot. We're all screwed a little bit here right now.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to now, it's been, we're going into I feel like our third year of having a slower market. And this is when kind of doubt comes in, right? You're like, I was telling you about one of my friends yesterday on stage said, she said something that I really liked. She had this Modern Mortgage Summit deal. It was like, you ain't as good as you thought you were in 2021, but you're not as bad as you think you are in 2024. And I'm like, that really hit me. And because it's easy to get in your head. We've had this slow bleed. Like we were talking about earlier, I think something like 60-something% of loan originators in Colorado did not renew last year.
67%, guys.
67%.
That is ridiculous.
It's like 30% left. But of course, all of us, because we have our algorithms, trained to look at mortgage and real estate, it looks like there's as many as there were ever. But in reality, north of 60% of people are out of the business already. And I don't know that it'll ever go back to 21. This might just be more of what the new norm is. And just like we've done, how many times have you had to adapt? 4? 5?
Yeah.
It's probably your 5th rodeo now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because you had, early 2000s.
Early
right?
2000, after like 9/11, things slowed down a lot.
Yeah.
And then 2007, 2008, I saw that turn. And I mean, I would stay up at night just watching the news, seeing this bank crash. And I'm like, okay, wait, if Countrywide crashes
We're in real hot water.
We're in hot water. And then sure enough,
Yeah.
I think Countrywide then went down too. It was bad, but the thing that kind of kept me in the business too is that I was working with a lot of these people who were actually losing their houses because my business was geared towards short sales.
Sure.
So I was doing a lot of short sales back then, and I think that's what helped me stay in the business because I feel like if I didn't do the short sales back in 2006, 7, 8, and 9, I would have been completely out of the business. But you always gotta, like, when things change, you have to adapt. So that's why now, everyone's talking about the NAR settlement, and a lot of people are freaking out. And I've watched videos. I've gone to a few conferences, like Zoom conferences about it, and I'm reading things into it. I'm not freaking out, but I know that like now, everyone has to step up their game.
100%.
I think like as far as a realtor yourself, you with the buyer, it's like now you have to kind of like interview with that buyer, and that buyer has to choose you, and they have to see the value that you bring in on that transaction. Because before it's like, you get a phone call, I'm like, hey, I want to buy a house. I heard that, you sold so-and-so their house, and now send me to a lender, and you send them to the lender, and you follow up with them. Now it's like, hey, because now the buyer might have to pay you, and it's definitely, we got to do a better job.
We're going to have to show real value now, especially on the real estate side. And I think the lines will become more blurred between real estate and mortgage, and everyone's going to kind of be involved with, money's going to be thinner, right? So there's going to be a lot of new models that spring up out of this, and I think are already starting to spring up. It'll push people into innovation, which could be good for us. But again, if there's 60%, 70% of the competition's gone, it's going to be beneficial for the guys that are really willing to do the work, the people that are really willing to do the work and want to be in this long term. This is a scary time for a lot of people, but I think it's also the time as leaders where we need to kind of take a step back and say, all right, it's changing, it's not going away. How are we going to be most efficient here and really help especially the younger guys? Because we've been, we're in our 40s now, and how are we going to help these 20-year-olds make this to where it's as sustainable and long term as to where we are now?
Yeah, and there's always going to be change, and it's how you adapt to those changes. Because at the end of the day, that we can't change what's already settled.
No.
It's there to stay, and so we just got to adapt to it and find out what's going to be the best way to proceed forward in your business and how to stay relevant. And like I said, we all have to be better. And there's a lot of things that are going to shake out that we don't know which way it might go, left or right. We have an idea of how things could shape up, but there's a lot of things that it's we don't know what's going to happen, but we just got to make the best of it, and we got to work hard. We got to educate people, educate our buyers, educate our sellers, and work harder and do the right thing. And, I think ultimately for realtors, there's probably going to be less money, less commission just in general in a transaction. And you just gotta deal with it. You just gotta, it is what it is. And we still can make a nice living working in real estate. So I would tell a lot of realtors that not to be scared. Just, simplify things, get better at your presentations, show your true value, why somebody should work with you, and be the best agent you can possibly be. That education is super, super important. Knowing, telling the client, there's a title rep, there's earnest money, there's an inspector, appraiser, there's a loan officer, the processor, and kind of explain, everyone's process in this whole home buying process. So, I think those are very important things to keep in mind. But we'll see how it shakes down.
I just think the days of, we were order takers for a long time there, and it was just like we were at like Chick-fil-A, and just 9,000 people would roll through the door and just boom, 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 and you've always had your sales hat on, but I think a lot of people stopped having to actually sell themselves and sell the house and, sell the rate. And, this is a sales job at the end of the day. Yeah. A lot of that is educating people. I completely agree with that. I think most of it is. But I just think that we all have to sharpen those skills back up, because we didn't have to sell for a long time. Yeah, it was just kind of inbound, and it was really easy to get loans, especially, when rates are 3%. Like, who's going to say no,
Yeah. Like, what was your probably the most amount of loans that you closed in what year?
2021. It was in my name. It was like 640 loans, 650 loans. I think it was like 210 million in volume. And then, we had a builder account. So my counterpart Gavin and we each got paid on a bigger pot of loans. So I think I got paid on 800 loans that year.
That is insane.
It was a lot of loans.
Wow.
And mostly inbound.
It was 100% inbound, and it was 96% purchases. If I would have been smart back then, I also could have closed 1,000 refis that year.
Yeah.
But, you talk about scaling a team up and, right hires. And
what's the size of your team right now?
Right now, I'm 7 people.
7 people?
Lean and mean. Yep, 7 people. It's me, executive assistant, and some junior loan officers.
So walk me through a typical process when you guys get a lead from a realtor. Like, how do you guys work that?
Absolutely. It depends on the realtor. Everyone has a little bit of a different file flow. Ideally, we get a warm intro to the client. Like, hey, listen, I got Brett. He's my lender on here. I've known him for 15 years. And that's what, as lenders, we really need to dig into with real estate agents. Like, how do you like to be referred? Well, what I want you to say is, Brett's closed more Spanish deals on the lending side than any other person in town. He's been doing this for 20 years, and he's helped 7,500 families. Like, that's how I want to be referred. How would you want to be referred? And we don't really role play this. We don't really ask each other these questions a lot of time. But when you think about it, it's something that simple. And so, this is a warm intro. If I were going to do a loan tomorrow, or if I were going to sell a piece of real estate tomorrow, I'd sell it with you. When I'm talking to a client, and to really edify the counterpart. You're working with Cesar? He's the best in the industry. He's been in this business for 25 years. There's like 5 guys, out of the 3 million people in Denver that have done it to this level for that tenure. Like, how'd you get with them? Like, how'd you make such a good pick? Oh, well, and then, people are showing off their story a little bit. No, I got referred, or he helped me in, or my cousin, or, and so really kind of getting into that story helps. And
Immediate credibility.
Credibility, yeah, edifying the other person. Be like, this is someone that I would personally do business with. They're great. So that's how I like to be handed off, right? I usually make an initial phone call. I don't do much of the loan process anymore. I manage the loan process, which is kind of where I'm at in my seat, right? My juniors, they take the application, they pull credit, they get income docs, they structure the loan. I usually have a phone call with the client after that, go through the terms, conditions of the loan, make sure that they're happy, so on and so forth. We're sending out little gifts throughout the process and stuff like that, as well as keep them engaged. We do an all about you for them. What's your favorite candy? What's your favorite movie? Stuff like that, just so we know how to, all right, they really like this. Send them, to the movies, or send them whatever their favorite candy is, or favorite book, or so on and so forth. So I think we really got to get in better relationships with the clients, and it's been so transactional for so long that we haven't had to do that stuff. So it's cool to really get back into it. I'm excited about all of it, because it was so easy to step back at, in those days and just take orders. And now I'm like, all right, well, I actually got to work a bunch again. And me and you thrive on that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't. So meet with the client, issue the pre-approval letter. When you find a house for them, that's when we get really hot and heavy. Chances are I've closed a deal with a listing agent. We've done so many buyers over so long. usually we're going to know that the person on the other side of that phone, and they're going to know that we execute. So I call them personally. They're good to go. You know me, right? Yeah. Okay, good. Good, because I know you too. Like,
Yeah. And that goes a long ways. A lot of times when there's multiple offers on a property and your offer might be slightly lower than the other one, they will take your offer because they know that you're going to take them to the closing table.
100%.
Yeah, that's so true because I remember I had a listing and I think one of his realtors made an offer on one of my listings and it was Brett, and the lender, and I like that it's a deal. But I think what I try to do when I have an agent or a lender that I know, I try to help them out. I'm like, hey, you kind of need to be more or less here to kind of be in competition or to get the property. I try to help them out because I would prefer doing business with somebody that I know who's good for it, who's going to close, and we want to win together. So I think I always try to help out agents who I've done business with in the past or lenders that I've done business with in the past. I always try to help them out, and I think I would love for that. It comes full circle too. That if I'm making an offer for one of their listings or
100%.
whatnot, that they do the same thing for me as well.
Yeah, I'll have agents like, I'm not even the lender on the deal, and I'll have an agent call me and be like, hey, listen, they didn't go with you or whatever, but I know that you have a great relationship with whichever agent is on the listing side. Like, can you talk to my lender and then talk to, and it'll be this game of telephone. And like, I don't care if I don't get paid on that. Like, I'm here to help. Yeah. Everyone's done in this room's done pretty well. We've all been doing it for a while. And now it's like, all right, how can we be connectors? I think that's the next big thing, right? Yeah. Like I heard a story last night that was really cool. There's a big investor in town who ran into a real estate agent of mine, and this big investor. And his daughter is going to be going to MIT and studying physics. So like a little bit smarter than I am.
A little bit.
Just a little bit. And so this gal, he works with a mega agent in Denver, and it's not this gal. And she said, hey, listen, my father's friends with the head of particle physics at UC Berkeley or something like that. The guy's been there for 40 years. Would your daughter like to get on a Zoom call with him?
Wow.
That's what I'm talking about with connections.
Relationship business.
100% relationship business. We're in the people business. We're in the relationship business. And the people that care the most, and not just for right now, but over the long term, those are going to be the people that really win. And it's cool to see the company here grow with Megastar so much because I've known that you've been that guy for a long time. And then just seeing people gravitate towards that and gravitate towards what's real. We can all be real fancy and real flashy. It doesn't mean anything. Like, I've had the Lambos. It's fun. It's cool. Yay me. It doesn't matter. What matters is like who's going to go into battle with you and really grind and get up at 4:30 in the morning and drop their daughter off every day, 5 days a week, and then go and door knock 50 houses a week and really show, all right, this is what hard work is. Y'all, you sure you want a piece of this?
You sure?
You sure? Are you sure? You sure? That kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, seeing that from the outside looking in and how, your company's grown and you're growing and you're shrinking at the same time, right?
Yeah. I think we both shrunk a little bit.
So. We both got like the Benjamin Button disease. I look terrible up there. I was 225 pounds. And it's not a weight problem. That's a height problem. If I was as tall as you, I'd look great.
No problem.
But you're down, 25 pounds this year?
Yeah, I am. I'm down 25 pounds. And actually, it's been a journey for me. I think I've always been pretty athletic, sports, my whole life with my brother, my cousins, my friends. Captain my basketball team, the MVP of my basketball team my senior year. Played basketball all through my 20s and then tore some ligaments and had some health issues with my ankle. But now I'm starting to play basketball once a week again. And so basically what it came down to is just kind of realizing that, I'm older. My metabolism has changed. My thing was before is I would eat anything that I want. Yep. And I knew that I would just burn it off. My wife was like, you always put in the work. She's like, you just eat like all day, every day. And you eat junk food. You eat, 3-4 plates. And, her family calls me.
Goloso.
What does her family call me? They just say that I eat any of the leftovers. And like her mom's just always stuffing food on my face. I'm like, man, so now it's a mental thing, and so I think I incorporated, taking some of the the sugar out of my diet. A lot of pink lemonade. I think I cut down like on the sugar like 90 to 95%.
Wow.
My workouts are very, very consistent.
Super consistent.
I'm also fasting a little bit too as well, drinking a lot of water.
The fasting thing's crazy to me because we were talking about this the other day, and I'm like, what do you fast? Like until lunch? And he's like, nah, man, 2 days. I'm like, wow, that's a real proper.
You know what? And it actually has tested me mentally so much because I remember when was it? It was last night. I opened up the fridge and I'm like, man, all this looks so good. I'm just staring at it and I'm like, nope, boom. And it's like, I'm testing myself mentally too as well. And I think it just makes me stronger. It makes me more focused. And I think it's helped me out tremendously. And I'm going to keep doing it. And it just actually feels good when you start seeing, some of the results that you're actually putting in. And it's not, from one day to the other. It takes time.
It does.
It takes time.
It's like building a business.
Yeah. And so I was at Lifetime Fitness. This must have been like maybe a year ago.
Yeah.
And I was getting ready to go swimming. And then I see Brett walk by and he looks at me and I look at him and I'm like, hey, because we hadn't seen each other in a while, but we see each other's stuff on like Instagram. I like his stuff, he likes my stuff, and I always see what he's doing. He's like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm going to swim. He's like, you're going to swim? I was like, I want to swim 1,500 meters right now. I was like, what are you going to do? And then he starts talking about macros and all this stuff. I was like, dude, you're on a different level, man. But then I was like, man, he's ripped, man. I was like, dude, what are you doing? He's like, man, I think then when I talked to you, you had gone from like 225 to like 200 or so.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, I'm gonna run for a marathon. I'm gonna do this. I was like, whoa, man, you're definitely look a lot better, man. He was like, yeah, well, thank you. I was like, let's get a lift in one of these days, And so I think a week later we got together and we lifted, and it was excellent to connect with somebody who's been in the business so long. It wasn't like he was trying to seek business from me or I was trying to seek business from him. It was just nice to have a nice conversation, work out with somebody that's been in the business a long time and go through some of the stories that we went through and some of the same struggles too, because we're a little older and I've had, lately some weight issues that I've wanted to conquer and same thing with him. And so just to kind of see him go through the same struggles that I went through, but obviously he's doing in his way, right? And I'm doing it in my way, but just to see that improvement, it's really, I love it, man. I love seeing that. And did you run over here?
I hurt my hip at the Tokyo Marathon about 3 weeks ago, so I'm only doing 20 miles a week right now.
Only.
Not my usual 50 or 60.
50?
So I'm taking it a little easy.
So to do 50 or 60 miles, like what are you doing daily? Like you're doing like 10?
So the way that I would usually break that up is I would do what we like to call easy runs. So there'll probably be 3 easy runs a week. So those will probably be 8, 16, 24, so about 8 miles each. So those are just, I live kind of by Wash Park. I know exactly like all the distances now,
Like have it every day.
It's like the Hangover. It's just like I'll like remembering.
Yeah.
At the casino. So I know it's like 1.3 miles from my house around the little loop to Wash Park. It's 2.2 on the inner track for Wash Park, yada, yada, yada. So I'm kind of figuring it out mentally and breaking it down in piece by piece. So those will be 3 days. And then I'll have like a big interval day, which will usually be 12 to 14 miles. So it'll be 2-mile warm up and then 5 miles at marathon pace.
What's marathon pace?
Right now it's about, I ran this last marathon in 3:14, so about 7:20. So, I mean, like we were talking about earlier, I'm not a 160-pound guy. I got a little muscle on me. So it's funny to see all the pictures from the Tokyo Marathon. Because I'm like kind of bigger and just all these dudes that are like super skinny. And running with them, it's cool to be that competitive.
Yeah, you look like you ate one of the runners.
I feel like I did by the end of the race. It's like I still got a little extra weight here. And I ran that race at about 185. So from my height, I was down 45 pounds, which again for a man that's just about 5'9", that's a lot of weight. So that'll probably be 12 to 14 miles, and then Sunday will be my big run, which will usually be between 18 to 22. So for that, I'll get dropped off at Kennedy and then take Cherry Creek Trail down in front of Lifetime to Wash Park around by where DCC is, up through Wash Park, 3 or 4 loops around Wash Park, back through the loop over to the house, and then back down to the house. So point to point for me is a lot easier to run, or like Highline Canal is awesome for that because you're not just right before I think I went to Japan, one of my last ones, it was like sketchy out or snowy or something. So Wash Park was pretty reasonable to run in.
Yeah.
So I had to do 10 laps of Wash Park, which like, it's just mentally, that's what we talk about, like mental fortitude. And, I have a coach that helps me with that stuff. And what you were talking about earlier leans in a lot about, what we talk about in coaching is like, what's your standard? You have super high standards right now. Your standards are, you don't eat a bunch of junk food. No. You cut down 90% of your sugar, and your standard is you wake up at 4. Your standard is you take your daughter to the school every day. Your standard is you knock 50 doors a week. We all got to really figure out what our standards are. Like what
sets you apart?
Yeah, like what sets you apart, and what is going to get you the result that you want. And it's usually by having a super high standard and not being willing to deviate from that standard.
Exactly.
Like, this is my bare minimum. Anything I do above this is gravy. But like, if I need to run 50 this week, I'm running 50. I ain't running 49.9.
Yeah, you don't negotiate with yourself because that is the bare minimum, the standard, just how Tony Robbins said.
Negotiating with terrorists. When
Yeah.
Like a couple of weeks ago, we had that snowstorm that came in on Thursday, and I was at the gym, I think at 4:15, and I think I posted that, and someone was like, "You're crazy. Why do you?" I was like, "Hey, I'm doing something that's working, and if I don't do it mentally, I'm screwed that day." Yeah. That's how I feel.
100%. Like it ruins my day. Like, exactly. I wasn't able to work out for a couple of days with my hurt hip, and I'm like, I talked to my girl, I'm like, Eunice, I'm going crazy here. Like, I gotta move.
He was listening to Shakira the whole time, saying these hips don't lie.
I wish it would lie. It told me that it felt okay, but I'm on the mend, and I'm like, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to run through some of it, and it's uncomfortable. But again, like, I'm not gonna take 3 weeks off or a month off, and I refuse to kind of go back to what I was doing before.
Brett, what was the low point? Like, what made you make that change? Because you said you were like, drinking Coronas, tequila all the weekends, and you blowed up. You're like 225, 230 or something like that.
Yeah.
What was there a low point? Did something happen? What made you make that shift, that change?
You get kind of sick of just like lying to yourself and those around you, right? There's two kinds of people, in my opinion, and I'm no doctor, but there's people that want to quit drinking and people that have to quit drinking. Fortunately, I really wanted to give up drinking. I got to a point where I was really heavy, like I just didn't feel good. I wasn't motivated. In 2021, like we said, we were making so much money, it was crazy, right? So I was in Tulum twice a month, popping bottles, clubs, yada yada yada.
Living the life.
Like, it was.
You're feeling yourself a little bit.
Yeah. Just and then you look back at these pictures, and I'm like super upset with everyone now. I'm like, why didn't you tell me I was that big? What is wrong with you? You guys hate me. So it just got to the point to where I was tired of being tired, like getting up lethargic, not being able to move, everything hurt, and I'm like, I'm 39, 40 at this point. And then so one day I just told Eunice, I'm like, I'm done. Like, I'm starting 75 hard today. This is years ago, a couple of years ago. And not many people were doing it at that point. Like, now it's like all the rage, right?
It's trending.
It is trendy. So I've done it twice. And, soup to nuts, didn't miss a day. Everything was executed at a super high level. And then I got through that first one, and you look at that day 1 picture and that day 75 picture, and you're like, oh, man. All right. And that's where a lot of people fail. Because there's no day 76 for most people. Day 76, people go back out and they get hammered and they eat 9 tubs of ice cream and they do exactly what they did that got them to the point to where they needed to do the 75, right? So when you're doing something like that, it's really mentalizing, all right, what's going to happen from day 76 until forever? And after that first 75, I kind of fell off a little bit. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna do it again, and then I'm going to enter a race. I'm going to enter a marathon. I'm going to run the Colfax Marathon. Which was the first marathon that I ran, which was last year in May. So all that kind of led me down, depression, being overweight, not having a great relationship with my girl, typical stuff, and fortunately I was able to pivot and not get super caught up in it and say, all right. And then so I lost the weight, entered my first marathon, finished it. The goal was under 4 hours. I ran a 3:48, and I was still about 200 at that point. And then, did Chicago in October, Tokyo. Now I got Berlin next, New York after that this year. And then that leaves, so there's 6 majors. Wow. Yeah, so that leaves London and then Boston, which is kind of the grail.
Nice.
For 2025.
Do you-
Are you gonna do sub three? Sub three?
Sub 3. I'm training towards sub 3 for Berlin. So like 650s. So I'm gonna have to be about what you weigh right now, about 175, 180, in order to make that happen.
Yeah, let's a little bit of muscle.
I might. Yeah. Yeah. Or I'll just be extra handsome. Sure.
Stay tuned.
Are you doing all these marathons too, like to put like a little pressure on yourself too, to stay in line with what you're currently doing?
I think we all at some point need to back ourselves into a corner a little bit, whether it be with business or finances, and really like getting on a budget, kind of sticking to it, not doing crazy things. Health, yeah. Like I think from now until I can't run anymore, like I'll always have a goal out there for something. Once I finish the big 6, I don't know what that looks like.
Ultra.
Looking at
There you
ultras,
go.
looking at Leadville 100, the UTMB I really like, which is it's an ultra around Mont Blanc. I think it's 130 miles, something like that would be. And I have some ultra runner buddies. They're a different breed.
How do their toenails look?
Awful. Like mine are awful, and they're worse than mine. Like, they don't have them. Like I don't know. Like, don't ever Google like David Goggins' foot.
So you're not gonna be modeling any sandals? Or anything like that?
No. People are like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I've run. I'm sorry." But it's part of the show. It's like lifting a lot, having calluses, yada yada yada. Stuff breaks, especially when you get in your 40s.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more problematic.
Have you built a lot of relationships while running at these marathons?
A ton. I met some really cool people at the start of every race. There's one guy. He's awesome, a Filipino dude. He lives in New York, and we connected at the very beginning. And he was like mentally like, this is like 12th marathon, and he was just in kind of a funky place right before the marathon. And I met him in like the lines of the bathroom, and I just hammered on him for about 5 minutes in line. And I was like, "No, man, you're gonna smash your all-time record today. Like, let's dig in. You can do this. Like, are you in better shape or worse shape?" "No, I'm in better shape, but this and that and the other." And then, we got each other's Instas and stuff like that. And it was really cool. Like a week later when he was doing some reels and so on and so forth, and he was like, "And thanks to Brett Baird for getting my mind right before and like helping me smash my PR." And like that little, oh God.
How did that make you feel?
Just unbelievable. It's worth it, helping someone.
Yeah.
And we look at that in business and life, and people oftentimes aren't that vocal about it. So I think we all need to do a better job of being more vocal about it and showing that gratitude and like tagging people in cool stuff and, going the extra mile to help someone that's maybe not having their best day. He wasn't in an awful place, but he was ready to run a 4:30. And I think he ran like a 3:50.
And he was a stranger. You just met him at the stalls.
Yeah, that's what I love that stuff. I love that stuff. I love going to places completely not knowing a person and coming out with 10 people that I'll probably hang out with. And that's why I travel a lot. Like people travel for different reasons. People travel to see museums. People travel for food. People travel to see the sights. I travel to see people mostly, right? Like I build relationships. And then I go back to see those people. It's like, I usually go to Spain once a year just to see the host family that I lived with 25 years ago, because the parents are getting a little older. So I go and see them once a year. I think that stuff for me is really important because those people always can't come and visit us. And, fortunately we're blessed and make good money and have a great team, and I'm able to, do some traveling and stuff like that. So all that's important, and it all comes from a place of gratitude. And I've had plenty of people pour into me and coaches and, some great people out there. And, at some point it's kind of your turn to turn the tide and give a lot of it back.
We're in position to make a difference in people's lives.
100%.
And I think, once you realize that, it's not so much about how much money can you make or what can you do for yourself. I think when you're in a position to make a difference to other people's lives, it'll all come back to you one way or another.
100%.
And so I think, and I've realized that too, that I'm in position to, make a difference. And, I've had some like discussions with like my parents, and they're a little old school. And one time they would always tell me like, "Hey, don't teach all your secrets to your agents, and just, because, you got to keep something in your back pocket." And I'm like, you know what? No. I was like, I'm going to teach them everything that I know. And if they use it, great. If they don't use it, that's on them.
That's their
I was
loss.
like, but I'm going to teach them everything that I know, because ultimately how I feel is that's going to come back on me. That's going to come back. They're going to give me back, opportunities to work with them on certain transactions, certain big deals. And man, you have no idea how many times I've seen this already happen to me, where, I've taught a lot of certain things that some people don't know how to do. And, and I just see it now, and I'm like, man, when I see some of my agents win, they're flipping or they're getting these big deals, I'm super excited. I get super happy. Like I feel like I did the transaction or I got it, but it just makes me so happy, to be honest with you.
I mean, the first thing you told me when I walked in, and this is telling, it's a testament to that, right? The very first thing he told me when we walked in the office this morning is he told me a story about a younger guy on the team who just had a really big month. And he was so excited that this 22-year-old had not just made a bunch of money, that he's getting coached up to save some of that money too. Right? Like that was a win for you. You weren't like, man, I'm killing it this month. I got 6 listings in the last week, and I'm doing this flip, and I'm going to make $100,000 on it. Like, there was none of that came up. It still hasn't come up. It was like, look at the story of this 22-year-old kid who made $50,000 last month. Yeah, that's a good year for a lot of people. Selfless. Yeah. So I think, servant leadership, real servant leadership, because everyone does this. There's a lot of this out there right now, especially, with all the Instagram and so on and so forth. That's why you've exploded. Because you're not some monster recruiter that goes out there and hammers on agents and posts 17 times a day about how you benefit everyone's lives and so on and so forth. People seek you out because you're the real deal, because you've done it for 25 years, because you show people you care, because you tell stories like that before you tell your own story. That's why you've grown. You've got a good heart.
You're adding value when you're not even in their brokerage.
Yeah. No, I just want to help people out. If we can make a difference, I'm happy for it. And if I can help somebody, change the trajectory of where they were going and where they're going to go now, I'm all for it.
I love it.
So, and I like motivating my family, my younger cousins, any family member, any friends that I have. I got another buddy too. We were just talking about. I was like, damn, man, we got a little heavy, man. And so, he texts me like pictures of what he's weighing, and I text him back pictures of what I'm weighing, and I'm pushing him, like, dude, you can do it, and that's nice, and it's not everything that has to do with money, but it's just, I know that I'm in a position where I can influence people in a positive way, and we can still make mistakes and all that, but if we can influence people in a positive way, that's huge. It's
a much different conversation than we used to have when we'd compare notes on like who drank more the night before, like, or who was, who had the rougher go that weekend, and now it's
solid 5.
100%.
That still comes up once in a while, but
but like in moderation, you know what I mean? And it's not the life anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
No, so it's good.
So Brett, tell me about this Tulum project that you got going on.
Yeah.
How did you hear about it? How did you get involved in it? And I just want to hear the whole story.
Kind of an interesting story. It was during 21.
Making a lot of money. Probably had a really big night out the night before, and I was looking at some properties down there, and this broker brought me a deal, and it was really appealing. It was a very interesting project because it's a mile into the jungle, straight from where Taboo is, like the beach area there. And it was just this really big villa, 9-bedroom, 7.5 bathroom villa. At that point, it was kind of expensive. Now it would be very expensive. So I got into that deal right. I think the material, it's foot long, it's foot thick concrete with rebar. I think the concrete now the cement would cost as much as the house would, or what I paid for it, right? Yeah.
It's been a battle. Business is done a little bit differently down there, and I have a very high tolerance for that, which is great. So the house it looks like I'll probably have it within the next 60 days, which will be officially 2 years late.
2 years late.
Just 2 years late from the delivery date. It's 2 full years of missed rents. But
contracts are just as bad over there as they are over here.
Now it's like the CEF or CFE. It's like the electricity getting out to the house. So basically waiting on Excel. So once that's done, then we'll water, power, and we're good to go. But I bought that right. I was into that deal for 1.3. It's probably worth 3.5.
3.5?
Yeah.
What's the square footage, or is metros cuadrado, right?
Metros cuadrados, it's like 640 square meters, so like 7,700 square feet on a 20,000 square foot lot. 9-bedroom, 7.5 bath, a pool, a cold plunge, 2 jacuzzis, and it's wild. We actually, I don't know if you guys listen to EDM at all. Mm-hmm. One of the goats, in my opinion, probably the GOAT DJ, Solomon. He threw a party there. They brought in generators and stuff. He had Afterlife, which is a big party in Tulum for New Year's Eve. And then I got hit up by the builder, and they're like, Solomon wants to throw a friends and family party at your house. because there's this giant jungle and then there's one house that's already built there and that's mine. And then so they trucked in generators and it created just a ton of buzz for the house. The house got millions of eyeballs on it that weekend. And it's going to rent to people, like the guys that go to Burning Man, the other guys at my age that have a bunch of money from New York and stuff like that. So it's like Solomon's house now. Solomon DJ'd there. So it's good for me because rent's probably just went up.
How many people does it sleep?
It sleeps about 18. We had probably 1,000 people there that night.
Wow. And my question is, do you have a stripper pole there?
There's no pole.
What do you mean?
There's no
You can charge more now, for a stripper pole.
After that, I mean, like, there's no law back there in the jungle. You know what I mean? Which is why they wanted to throw the party there. But it was a heck of an experience. It was really cool to see. So that was one project. I bought a condo in Guadalajara. That's where my girl's from. So in the Landmark and the new development there in Andares. And then during COVID as well, so I got 3 Mexico projects. We bought 10 acres on the beach in North Yucatan. It's called El Cuyo. So it's like Cancun and kind of like just around the horn there's El Cuyo. Like Holbox is just catty corner to it. So all those deals are turning out to be really good. There's just a ton, there's a ton of Canadians and Americans that are going to be retiring. And the populations of expats down there are just exploding. And with that comes money. There's something like in Quintana Roo right now, there's something like 1 million units being built.
Wow. What is your plan with the Yucatan project?
Tulum, Airbnb it.
Airbnb it?
Yeah.
What do you think it go for nightly?
I think in low season it'll be about 800 a night. I think high season, like Christmas to New Year's Eve, 3,500 a night.
Okay.
No loan.
Okay.
Property manager, got a great property manager. She'll take 20%. Yada, yada, yada. So I think occupancy will probably be 70, 75% on it. So cash on cash, it'll be a really good return, but it's super stagnated, right? Because it took an extra 2 years. So it's just been the most stagnant money I've ever had in my career. But I think that, in the transgression of it being built, they built an airport and the Maya Rail, the train Maya's started. So, that's 1,000 miles of railway that goes from basically Tabasco, Campeche, Yucatan, Quintana Roo. It goes clear down to almost Belize. It goes 100 miles an hour, so you'll be able to hop on. If you go to Cancun, you can hop on the rail and be in Tulum in 30 minutes. Really cool. Wow. Yeah. So I think all of that's just going to expand, the reach of that part of the world. Mexico has more tourists than all of Latin and South America combined.
That is insane.
It's like 25 million visitors a year, and I think the rest of them combined are something like 21 million a year. And Mexico's like it was something, I don't know if it's going to go that quick. It was like the next 5 to 7 years, it should be 50 million. Jeez. So there's going to be a massive pool of people. There's not really many villas. There's maybe like 3 or 4 in Tulum that are of this size. I'm sure there's going to be, someone's going to build something crazy that's cooler and whatever. But the pedigree of having that party thrown there's like a cool stamp on it.
Oh, yeah. Do you have content on that? Like,
I'll show you some of it.
I'm so excited.
My favorite part of the whole thing was that if you were to walk it, it's like a couple miles into the jungle from the very entrance where everyone was going in. And I don't know how, but a taquero showed up, and it wasn't on a truck. It was like a push cart, like pastors. And like, so one of the videos, I'm like on the balcony, and there's like 1,000 people, and I like zoom out. Like, what is that? Is that fire? And it was just some dude just crushing pastor.
Tacos al pastor, boom, boom, boom.
So, I mean, a lot of cool memories and like getting to meet, the DJ, and I'm connected with his manager now. And they're like, oh, you want to come to the show? We'll give you a ticket. Like, just cool. And I also got to meet some really, really influential Mexicans.
Like politics or like
yeah, like
or developers.
Well, one of them runs
cartel.
Sure, the lines get blurred. Legit guys. One of them runs bars and nightclubs, and he's maybe the biggest in Mexico. He's from Nayarit, lives in Guadalajara, and he has 500 and change bars, nightclubs, and restaurants in Mexico. Yeah, he may be the biggest one. So we're buddies now, and we text. So that's really cool. And then, made a good friends with a younger guy whose family is like a real big deal in Mexico City.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Are you ever going to have any masterminds there?
Yeah, I'm actually planning on it. I'm going to get, my coach Ben Newman. I'd like to get him down there. And then I'd like to take, some of the head guys like you. You're always welcome as well. But like some of the leaders on this side of the business, like let's all rip down there together. We got a place to stay.
A write-off?
Blast.
Yeah. And just like decompress and actually like talk through how we're going to keep impacting people and how we're going to keep this rent alive and how we can all be better. We're all going to learn stuff from each other.
Exactly.
You know, I learned stuff from you every day. I had a great dinner last night with Brett Weinstein. He's one of my favorites. We're all going to take nuggets from each other. And if we get 7 or 8 or 10 of us together down there, you know, and kind of take a little bit of the pressure off of being, you know, in a conference room here.
Yeah, having to be somewhere else.
Yeah, I think ideas will flow. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And I'll have agents that want to take their teams and so on and so forth. Like it's gonna be a really useful house. The other thing that I'm really looking at with it is there's a lot of like big Italian money and European money that goes to Tulum, right? There's a bunch of direct flights to Cancun from everywhere in Europe. So it's going to be really easy to do house swaps with it. So if I ever want, you know, a villa, a multi-million-dollar or euro villa on Lake Como for a week, there's going to be a dude that wants my house for a week, and then we're just going to exchange it. So I think it's going to change the way that we travel as well.
Nice.
And most people are not thinking about stuff like that. Kind of going back to the NAR settlement and how you were saying that how there's a different perspective that a lot of people are not looking at. Share some insight on some of those big players that people might not be seeing with the NAR settlement.
I mean, with the NAR settlement, I just think that the lines are going to get blurred. I think that if people say that there's going to be the same money for realtors, for buyers agents, they're wrong. I think that, I mean, Lord knows, and I don't want to speculate and get a hit put out on me here or something like that, but there has to be some big money behind this. I don't know if Zillow's behind it. I don't know if BlackRock's behind it. They're going to make it more difficult for first-time buyers. I think the Department of Defense might get involved at the very end. Lord knows, you know, because it's really bad for vets, which is who we should be protecting at all costs because they protected us. So that's just appalling because a vet, it's illegal for them to pay their own commission. So if the seller doesn't pay it, the vet can't buy the house. Just straight up, that's the rule. So it's either the rules get modified, we can start to finance the commissions into the loans, which Fannie and Freddie may change, and they might get like a CHFA, like a second loan or something like that for the commission, which could be a thing. Or it's going to get skinnier because, you know, people like, you know, the Zillows and Redfins of the world, they probably banked on this going through, and Lord knows if any of them even helped fund it. I don't know. Super speculative, but Lord knows in this world, you know, anything's possible. And there's going to be models that roll out where brokerages will do deals for $2,000. Like, it's going to be a thing. They won't be as valuable as a good agent. But a lot of people, I look through, you know, a lot of my big time mortgage buddies, their comments and stuff like that, because they're posting an awful lot about this. And there's always some people out there that are like, no, you're just simply not worth this much money. You know, I'm not going to give you 5.6 or 6% of my $2 million house that took me 20 years to build up that equity. Like, it's not yada, yada, yada. So I think really proving the value. And, you know, we were talking about this last night at dinner. Instead of NAR, like NAR's like they collect fees and they do all these things. Like what they should have been doing is pushing the bar for better agents. Like, let's make people better. Let's educate people more. And none of this probably would have happened. I think this all happened in like Missouri, where I think the rules are real fast and loose.
Yeah, but they don't even have buyer agency agreements.
Yeah. Like, you know, something was going to change at some point. This is a lot like Dodd-Frank for us back in the day, right? So, and what I mean about blurred lines is I think an awful lot of agents or managing brokers will also become branch managers for mortgage companies maybe. People are going to get dual licensed. I see a bunch of lenders getting their real estate licenses. I've seen some realtors.
Yep.
Yeah. I think the pie is going to be smaller, so it's going to evolve into a different thing. And that's where we really need to look at this and be like, all right, how do we be at the forefront of this? We need to implement something not in 6 months. We need to implement something within the next 60 days that is beneficial to every party. Like, there's going to be less juice for all of us. Okay, cool. That's a fact. Like, and I'll argue anyone on it. There's going to be less meat on the bone. It's a fact. And if you don't think so, you're delusional. And you can get your lunch eaten by someone that's willing to do it for $2,000 and they're going to do 30 deals a month. They're going to make the same money. They're going to work a lot harder. But their also expectations might be a lot lower. So I think it's going to be a collaborative effort, and mortgage people are going to need to be in better relationships with like managing brokers and the realtors, like as a real team together. It's not like I got my team and you got your team. It's our team now, and we all need to push each other to be better. That's what's going to, I think, evolve out of this. And I think there are going to be mega teams out there that do 90% of the business, and then there's going to be guys that fight over scraps.
Yeah, because I think what's the rule? Like 80% of the business is done by 20% of the agents or something like that. It might go to like
100%.
90% of the business is done by
or
10%
or
of
95.5.
Yeah.
Like it's the writing is on the wall, and I love rose-colored glasses. Unfortunately, this isn't a situation where they're going to work. Like, yeah, we want to see the best in it. We want to see the best in people. There's going to be weird situations that come out of this, like we were talking about earlier. I mean, let's say you have a property on the market for 500. You're the listing agent, and I bring you a buyer, and I say, all right, it looks like you're willing to pay cooperative compensation. How much are you paying? Well, Brett, how much is your offer? Because at 480, I'll pay you a point. At 500, I'll pay you full boat. So then it becomes this weird thing where agents are really negotiating on behalf of themselves. I mean, the whole thing's trash in my opinion.
Yeah.
But we're not going to do it. So let's figure out how to, make lemonade out of lemons here. And just like I'm saying, it's going to be a collaborative effort from guys like me and you that sit down and we're like, all right, how do we make all this work? How do we make our agents better? How do we make a real team that everyone can really depend on each other, and whether it be training, hanging out, yada, 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 whatever we need to do, masterminds, stuff like that. Like, we really need to get into that business. And just like you said earlier, relationship business. Yeah. Relationships are going to be paramount, and they're going to need to get real deep, real quick. Yeah.
100%. Brett, where do you see your social media exposure, your social media game, and also where are you headed next? Like, where do you see your team going? Like, what's next for you guys?
I mean, what's next for us? I'm real big at first-time homebuyers classes. So I do a lot of them in Colorado. I'm working on a national model.
I've seen that.
Yeah. Yeah, you've seen,
And I saw some, like, you're stalking me like some ad or something like that. It was like, Primero Compradores? Is that what it is?
Primeros Compradores.
There you go. Yeah. There you go.
Yep.
I seen you.
Absolutely. We market the hell out of it.
You got the URL?
Yeah.
That is awesome.
I got all the socials for it. So we market first-time homebuyers classes. I don't need to sit there and teach someone 6 hours how a loan works. It's an hour and 15 minutes. It's super clear, it's concise, and gives people the information to make a decision, right? Like, I don't care if it's a yes or a no, but like, make a decision. So I think a lot of people miss the boat on that. Like, I don't teach, like, when I'm buying a car, I'm not like, how do I rebuild the engine? Like, no, man, where do I put the gas? Is it safe? Cool, right? Like, I don't need to know all the mechanics behind everything. So, we're test piloting it in a couple other states. And then essentially it's going to be a way for me to build a big team nationally and attract awesome real estate agents. Yeah. Because if I called you, and let's say you were in Houston, and I said, hey, listen, come to a class with me. I'm going to be hosting a class. First one's free. You don't need to co-market it with me. I'm going to have 40 to 60 leads from this that you'll be able to put in your CRM. And 15, 20 people will show up.
They're going to say yes. You're adding so much value.
Yeah. So I think consumer direct's big for my team. That's the next big thing. Consumer direct's going to be paramount. And I think going beyond, we really got to start to think big. We have to think bigger, right? And for me, bigger is wider and deeper. And, on the questionnaire, there's a question on there like, what could you do better or something like that? And it's like, well, I need to coach my team more, right? So I need to get back into, we think about what got us here in the first place. And when I first built the team, I had like 30 people on it, and I coached the hell out of them, and I don't coach them that much anymore. So I think some of that stuff needs to change mentally, but also it'll help me scale out and then, have Zooms with a national team. And, there's 5 or 6 markets that I'm really looking at and expanding this. The socials are all firing on it. You see, I stalk you all the time.
Yeah.
It's the real deal, and I think we're one of the first ones to really figure it out, and looking at getting some real money behind it, and pushing it out. So I think from a social game, that's a big thing. Stuff like this I really like. It's I don't do enough of it, but it's always fun when I do.
And so on your social media, what would you tell like a new realtor or a new loan officer? What would you tell them about social media?
I mean, we all, it's just, there's so much content out there, and it's like, the top 3 this, the top 3 that. Like, that's cool, but like, I don't care about that. Like, who are you? Like, are you someone I could be friends with? Because if I don't like you, I ain't gonna do business with you. You know what I mean? So I think showing like the real side of things, like showing where you hang out, what you do. Like, for me, it's the running thing. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a big drinker partier anymore. Like, sure, I'll have Solomon at my Tulum property from time to time, but it's just not my jam. You know what I mean? So that attracts certain people, and it's not super polarizing. So it's not like me talking politics or something like that. They're like, all right, this dude likes to be in shape. He used to not be in shape. He's about self-improvement. He's about mental fortitude and, you know, bridging the gap. So I think a lot of it's just getting out of your head and doing something. Yeah. I don't like, one of my buddies says it really well, you know, with people they'll go, oh, check this house out. And it's like Minecraft. It's just like walking through the crib. It's like Minecraft, like open houses, and that's cool and stuff. But one of it's my friend Will Grimes, one of my favorite sayings of his is like, don't show me the picture of you on top of Mount Everest. Show me how you got there. Yeah. Right? Like, everyone wants the closing picture and, you know, the selfie with the big key, and that's cool. But like, how hard was it? What went wrong? Yeah. You know, tell me more about the process. And I think people they don't do a great job of really educating. Like, I don't know the last time I've seen one like, hey, listen, I'm at an inspection right now. You know, whichever inspector, tell me 3 things that you look for in an inspection. Stuff like that, but like on the fly, real, and not me in some beautiful studio reading off a teleprompter like I'm Joe Rogan.
Yes.
You know, like, so I think the realness has a big aspect to it. And I think stuff like this, that's off the cuff, it's not scripted. We're hanging out, we're boys, we're hanging out, having a good time, talking about what used to happen and what happens now.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, reminiscing is awesome, and it's fun to see where we all came from. But we need to plan for the future. Right? And stuff like this. I mean, even sitting here today, like all of our minds are working a little bit more now.
Exactly.
Right? We're thinking about, all right, well, maybe there's a point there, like, how do we work on this and how do we expound on this and how do we execute this more?
We can always be better.
We can.
And we're always working towards the better you, you know, and I think, like, I know I'm not a finished product, and I'm so far away from where I want to be, but I know that at least if I'm taking those steps towards it, I'm working towards something, then I'm progressing, you know, and I'm going in the right track. And, you know, sometimes, you know, we get off track, and that happens, and there's things sometimes that are outside of our control too that kind of, you know, pushes us off track. But I think ultimately, you know, as long as we're working towards something, I think that's key, you know. And I always tell people, you gotta always be working towards something, even if you're, you know, 50, 60. And imagine, like, you know, your projects that you're doing in Tulum. Like, I know in the back of the head, you're probably thinking, man, I want to retire, and I want to retire, and that's where I'm probably going to go and retire at, you know. And that's,
I mean, the house, it's just so unlivable. I'll show you it. It's built like a hotel. Each room has its own entrance. It's all built out over a pool in the central courtyard. It's really modern. Has an open air kitchen. It wouldn't be great to live in. It can be great to visit.
To host.
It's gonna be great on Instagram. Like, I can't imagine what's gonna get posted at that place. But like, but I mean, there's also been parts of that, and we talk about, like, right now, me saying, all right, this place is worth a bunch of dough. I had Solomon there. That's the Everest picture. But 2 years of having north of $1 million sitting there, cash money,
not producing anything.
Producing 1 cent other than the possible future equity. And there's been some sketchy stuff that's happened along the way where I'm like, I might not even end up with this place. I mean, it's not 100% still right now, right? So there's a lot of stuff behind that is better. I mean, I'll explain all that stuff as well, right? I mean, it's not all just, man, I went down there and had too much to drink one night and bought this awesome place. There's a lot of baggage that comes along with it. And I think the more real we are with that stuff, like, this process sucked. It was awful. The agent's terrible. I don't talk to her anymore. Agents down there get paid on signing contracts, not at closing.
Wow.
And they get like 8 points.
Wow.
So she had a good payday on this little deal
deal.
here, right? I haven't talked to her in 6 months, and I still don't have the property. 8 months, a year. That kind of thing, right? That stuff happens. So, and that's difficult, and it's tough to navigate. And you, like I said, you got to have a real high tolerance to do business in certain places. Especially with certain people, right? It's not generalizing. In Guadalajara, it's gone fantastic. You know, these guys are professionals. They're from Mexico City. It's a 42-story building. It's easy. It's like the Ritz, you know?
Yeah.
Really white glove, as opposed to like the dude shooting from the hip that did some projects and they went okay, and then all of a sudden they're doing like the nicest luxury in Tulum, and you're like, how many of these have you guys really done? Right? So I think being real about it and saying like, hey man, this ain't all sunshine and rainbows. This is hundreds of thousands of dollars, probably $500,000 in lost rent over the last 2 years.
And that's not easy to bear.
It ain't fun. And I mean, 2024 money isn't 2021 money. Like, it would have been much easier to buy furniture back then than it is right now. You know, there's this is all problematic. But we talk about our standard, right? Like, how the hell you can deal with it. I can get real pissed off and ball up my fist and, you know, Ned Flanders it. Or I can go and put my shoes on at 5 a.m. and I can go on my run and I can clear my head and I can treat people well and I can help inspire people or help people, you know, like get inspired and coach a guy up before a race who's a complete stranger, stuff like that. Like, that's going to make the difference. Being pissed off about the NAR settlement or the Tulum house, or none of it's going to get us anywhere, right? And I tend to drift negative. Like, if 9 bad things can happen, I'm going to think about 8 of them. So I really have to mentally like check myself an awful lot, because I'm a real smiley guy, but internally, like, stuff's tough. You know what I mean? So I think it's important, you know, like mental health, and like we like really get to talk about it with other people and peers, and not just the great stuff. And, you know, I hate legends. Like, I was a legend in 2021. I don't like that. Like, I want to be a legend now. And how do we do that? Right?
1% every single day.
That's it. Yeah, I agree.
Or what did Ed Milet say? That was it. One more, right?
Power one more.
Power one more.
Yeah. And it's just like you for your family, you're the one. Like, for me, for my family, I'm the one. Like, we're the first guys, probably. I don't know. But I think from what I know about you, you're the first guy to really go out there and kill it in business and like build this big thing. Maybe there's other entrepreneurs in your family. In mine, there's really not. My family's tiny. You know, it's me and my brother. No, there's no other children in the family. Like, we're the last ones. There's no kids. There's no grandbabies. Like, it's, you know.
There's been a few entrepreneurs in my family that have done really well.
Sure.
I look up to them, but you know, I want to create my own path. You know, and there's certain things that they've done that I probably wouldn't do, and I definitely just want to create my own path. And you know, and I'm in a different time, you know, in a different time than when they were. You know, like sometimes, you know, they came here and they didn't have a green card, and so they didn't have all the opportunities that I had from the get-go. So I feel like, you know, I should be able to do something a little bit better or bigger.
Sure.
You know, but at the end of the day, it comes down to me, like, health. Very, very important, because without health, you don't have anything. You can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have health, you don't have anything. It comes down to family, you know, and it comes down to your time and just being happy, you know. And so, I mean, you could be a top producing realtor, top producing loan officer, but if you're miserable, you're miserable, you know. And so those are the things that, you know, that you have to watch out for and take care of the things that matter the most, which is, you know, time, your family, loving someone, you know, your daughters, your wife, whatever it is, and your business. You know, I love my business. I love what I do. And so whether you're in real estate or any other business, you know, just make sure that you love what you do, that you're super happy doing it, because I wake up every morning excited to go to work. I'm happy to go door knock. I've done things way harder than some of the things I do now. And so to me, the things that I do, it's pretty easy. But you just have to do it consistently. And, you know, I'm like a machine, you know, like I'm like, boom, 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 boom. I got to get this done. I got to focus. And I still have time to do a lot of things that I want to do, you know, like now, like it's crazy. Like a couple weeks ago, we started getting like 5-6 guys together hooping on Saturday mornings. We've done it 3 weekends in a row, and now I have people like texting me from all over. Hey, can I come hoop with you guys? I'm like, yeah, come.
We need more courts.
Yeah. Well, the funny part is a lot of these guys are probably agents, and a lot of these guys are probably going to end up coming over because they see who you really are in real life, and it's not some big Ponzi scheme recruiting thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like,
I don't do it for like the pictures or anything, because
you're a good dude.
I don't care about any of that, to be honest with you. Now I know that for social media, like I have to be present, because I was one of those guys that I hated social media. I didn't want to be in social. I didn't want people to know how many houses I closed or nothing, because I didn't want people knowing anything about me. But I know that had to change, you know. But I don't like going to places just because so I can go take a picture or whatnot, you know. And I like getting people together and, you know, improving their lives, you know. And so it's been nice, you know, like, you know, one of my agents was like, man, I'm looking forward to Saturday. And
That's awesome.
And then last weekend, like 3 of us, we all went to the Royal Mall. I'm like, hey, man, we got some new basketball shoes, man. So I said, you ain't going to be able to keep up with me now. So it's great time.
It's good it's healthy, friendly competition.
Yeah, it's great times, but just getting people together and seeing that everyone's having a great time, that's what excites me. So, I look forward to my Saturday mornings now, and my wife knows it. She's like, yep, I know you're going to go hoop on Saturday mornings.
Creating a community, right? That's important. And I think we all got really detached in COVID because it was so easy. And everyone was at home, and it screwed a lot of people up real bad. Like, it's tough to get back into relationships and actually being with people in community and sitting here and chopping it up for an hour and a half. Like, that stuff was difficult for a while because those muscles weren't refined.
You got used to it.
You got used to it. You got used to the separation, which is awful, right? And so I think people more now than ever are craving that connection,
belly to belly.
Yeah, belly to belly. Yeah, I want to hang out with people. I want to be out there. I want to go do fun things. You know what I mean? I really do like what you said about time, though. And it's a good point. And I think, giving people time and also protecting your time. I say this all the time now. The more things I can say no to in a day, the happier I'm going to be when I go to sleep. Bad relationships, bad referral partners. I'm not going to do a bunch of stuff I don't want to do anymore. We talk about, this is when you're talking to a couple dudes that are in their mid-40s.
If it's not a no, it's a hell yes.
It's exactly it. Health and time and stuff like that, because, the older we get, we realize, we got friends that, at this stage of the game, we're losing friends, heart attacks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we really become more cognizant of the fact of how limited it is and how it essentially speeds up. What's the saying is the days go slow, but the years go fast.
Yep. Brett, I think we've had a great conversation here, talking about so many things.
Super fun.
I really, when we started thinking about doing this podcast, you were one of the first persons I wanted to get in here, because I was like, man, I want to share Brett's story, because he's from Denver, Colorado. You wouldn't think that his business is focused towards the Latino community. He speaks Spanish so well, and you're such a likable guy, man, that we started liking each other more through just social media, just liking our stuff, and then just kind of saw each other at the gym, and we had things in common, and just felt our relationship grow. And I just wanted to thank you so much for the time that you took to share a lot of your experiences, a lot of things that you're going through, talking about the NAR settlement. And, this is going to be huge. It's going to change. It's going to shake things up here. But, the people who really want to rise to the top, they're going to rise to the top, and they're going to figure this all out. And I think, you and I are one of those, and Arnoldo too. We're going to make it through all this together. And, just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to spend, your day here with us, your morning with Arnoldo and I on this podcast. And I know that you're going to be able to influence a lot of people when this gets out.
Thanks, brother. No, I appreciate you. To that point, sailors are made in storms, right? And we're in a storm.
It's coming.
We're going to get real good real quick. What's the saying? You better be good or good at it.
Yeah.
We're all going to have to get real good at it real quick here. And it's going to be through things like this. It's about getting together and thinking through it with like-minded people, and everyone's going to have a different perspective. And then let's figure out what the best model is. But no, it's an honor to be here. Super appreciate it. Super fun. I hope this helped. And I'm an open book if anyone ever wants to reach out to me and hey, what would you do here, or anything like John at the marathon. Yeah. I'm there.
And that is true. Brett does get back to you. He just gave me a shoe recommendation for my first marathon. It's going to be Boulder. Hopefully I'll finish. Keep you guys updated. But where can people find you?
The Brett Baird, TheBrettBaird on Instagram. So the Brett Baird, and then just Brett Baird on Facebook.
And what's the name of the website again?
Primeroscompradores.com.
Síganlo.
Thank you so much, Brett.
Thank you, guys.